Ever get that feeling like, you know, like there are these people out there shaping the things we love, but we don't even know their names?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, today's deep dive is about one of those guys.
Okay, cool.
We're talking about a recording engineer named Chris Huston.
Chris Huston.
And yeah, you probably haven't heard of him, but
I haven't.
That's what makes this so interesting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We're working from this article that's basically celebrating his whole career.
Okay.
And he worked with some huge names in music.
Oh, really? Like who?
I'm talking Led Zeppelin, The Who, Eric Burdon, and War.
Wow. Okay.
He even got a gold disc for engineering the Young Rascals' Groovin'.
That's a classic.
You know, I gotta admit, I don't really know what a recording engineer actually does.
Oh, yes.
Like, what makes them so important to how the music turns out?
Well, it's kind of like they're, I guess you could say like a sculptor,
Okay.
but with sound.
Yeah.
Instead of like clay or something.
Mm.
You know, they shape the performance, they capture all the little details, they make the artist's vision come to life.
So, like, with Groovin'.
Yeah,
What would Huston have done to make that song such a hit?
Oh, he probably used certain microphone techniques
Uh-huh.
and mixing strategies to get that warm, kind of laid-back vibe.
That's so cool. So it's not just knowing the tech stuff.
No, not at all.
It's like you got to have a musical ear.
Oh, yeah.
And know how to turn that into the recorded sound.
Thank you, exactly.
So where did this guy even come from?
Well, his story starts in Liverpool
Oh, wow.
back in the early 60s.
Okay.
Same time and place as, well, you know.
The Beatles.
Exactly.
No way.
Yeah, Huston was playing guitar in a band called the Undertakers.
Okay.
Right in the middle of that whole Mersey beat scene.
So those Liverpool clubs must have been incredible back then.
Oh, yeah, just buzzing with creativity.
Wow.
Imagine young Huston there, soaking it all up,
Yeah.
honing his skills with some of the most innovative musicians at the time.
It's wild to think about.
And get this, he even went to the same art college as John Lennon.
Yeah. You're kidding?
Nope, same one.
I wonder if they ever like jammed together in the hallways or something.
Who knows?
But wait, the Undertakers, they weren't that big, were they?
No, they weren't huge. They had this strong R&B influence, though,
Interesting.
which is kind of cool considering his later work.
Yeah.
But they never really made it big.
Huh.
Toured America even, but eventually split up.
So what happened to Huston after that?
Well, while he was in America,
Okay.
something kind of pivotal happened.
Oh.
Instead of sticking with performing,
Uh-huh.
he found himself drawn to the more technical side.
Really?
There's this story about him being totally fascinated by the recording process during their American tour,
Interesting.
spending hours in the studio asking questions, learning about the equipment.
So that's what led him to engineering.
Exactly. It was like a natural progression
Yeah.
for a musician who really understood how music works.
Makes sense.
So he started assisting some established engineers,
Hmm.
learned the ropes super quick, developed his own approach.
Cool.
And before long, he was working with some of the biggest names in rock.
No kidding. So his time in Liverpool playing in that band,
Yeah.
it might have actually set him up for his success later on.
Especially in soul music.
Totally. But hold on, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Right.
Let's rewind a bit and talk about those rock and roll years
Okay. Yeah.
where his engineering career really took off.
Sounds good to me.
From Liverpool clubs to legendary recording studios. This is already shaping up to be one wild ride. Buckle up, listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, so we left off with Huston like diving into the rock and roll world.
Yeah.
What were some of the big moments from those early years as an engineer?
Oh, man. The late 60s and early 70s were crazy for him.
I bet.
He was working with artists who were like pushing the limits.
Yeah.
And his engineering was a huge part of their sound. One album that really stands out is The Who's Next.
Oh, man, I love that album.
Right. It came out in 1971.
Yeah.
It's got all those epic experimental tracks.
Like Bubba O'Reilly.
Yeah, and Won't Get Fooled Again.
Such good songs.
And those are perfect examples of how Huston could capture that raw energy,
Yeah.
that sonic complexity of The Who.
It's crazy to think that this was back when multi-track recording was still pretty new.
Oh, totally.
They were often limited to just 4 tracks.
4 tracks. Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So how did they even create those intricate arrangements with so few tracks?
That's where a skilled engineer like Huston really shines.
Yeah.
They had to get super creative, using techniques like bouncing tracks.
What's that?
So they'd record multiple instruments onto one track
Okay.
and then transfer that combined track to another open track just to free up space.
Whoa, that sounds so complicated.
It was.
Yeah.
It took meticulous planning, a deep understanding of the music, and
Yeah.
a real willingness to experiment.
And Huston was up for the challenge.
Oh, he thrived in that environment. Never afraid to try new things,
Yeah.
to push the limits of the technology.
And it paid off.
Big Time, Who's Next, is considered one of the greatest rock albums ever.
Definitely.
And Huston's work was a major part of that.
It blows my mind that this guy who started in those Liverpool clubs
Yeah.
ended up shaping the sound of these legendary albums.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. But you mentioned earlier that Huston wasn't just a rock engineer.
Right.
He had a connection to soul music, too.
Yeah, that's right.
So around the same time he's working with these rock giants, he also starts engineering for Atlantic Records. Whoa, Atlantic Records.
The label known for its soul and R&B.
Like Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, that level.
You got it. Think Benny E, King Solomon Burke, Patti LaBelle,
Wow.
Mary Wells, and of course,
Whoa.
because These Browns is a man's world.
No way. That's huge.
Oh, yeah.
What was it like for him to go from that raw rock energy
Yeah.
to the smooth grooves of soul? Could he even handle that shift?
From what I've read, he totally embraced the challenge. Each genre needed a different approach,
Right.
a different feel for the nuances.
So for rock, it's about capturing that live performance energy.
Yeah, and for soul, it might be about highlighting the vocals
Uh-huh.
or the way the instruments play off each other.
And Huston could do both.
He was amazing at both.
Wow.
He could adapt to whatever the music needed.
That's incredible. How did he even manage to work with so many different artists?
Especially back then when studios were so busy.
Yeah. Was he constantly running between sessions?
It's hard to imagine, but he was super dedicated,
Yeah.
passionate about his work.
Makes sense.
He loved the energy of the studio, that collaborative process, and his reputation as a talented engineer helped too.
Oh, yeah.
Artists trusted him to get their sound right.
And he delivered. It's mind-blowing to think about how much music he had a hand in.
Right.
It's like he was this secret ingredient, adding his magic touch to all these iconic recordings.
Speaking of magic, didn't we mention a gold disc earlier?
Yeah, for groovin'.
Right, the Young Rascals.
Why did he get that signature sound?
Well, he used this technique called close miking,
Okay.
basically putting the microphone super close to the instruments and vocals.
Interesting. What does that do?
It creates a more intimate sound, more detail. You capture the subtleties that might get lost. Otherwise,
So for groovin'?
exactly. It emphasized the warmth of the vocals, the guitar, the groove of the rhythm section.
That's so cool. And people still use that technique today.
Oh, yeah. It's thanks to pioneers like Huston, who were
Wow.
willing to experiment and push the boundaries.
So he wasn't just engineering these albums, he was innovating too.
Totally.
Developing techniques that shaped music for years to come.
It's incredible.
It really is. But let's talk about the man himself for a second.
Okay.
What was Chris Huston like? What kind of personality did he bring to the studio?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, the sources don't say much about his personality.
Oh.
But from what I've gathered, he was known for being quiet, focused, professional.
So not a rock star engineer then?
Maybe not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
But there's a certain rock star quality to his dedication,
True.
his passion, his ability to deliver.
A true artist in his own right.
Exactly. Even if he preferred to be behind the scenes.
Sounds like he was the kind of guy who earned respect without needing the attention.
Yeah, a true unsung hero.
But there's still more to his story.
Oh, yeah,
His later years, his legacy beyond the studio.
definitely.
So stay tuned, listeners. We're about to go even deeper.
Into the world of Chris Huston.
Man, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. Huston's early days in Liverpool, his incredible success as a recording engineer,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
working with everyone from Led Zeppelin to James Brown.
Seriously.
But this article isn't just about celebrating his past.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing his impact now while he's still with us.
Yeah, I love that.
The title itself, Giving Uncle Chris His Flowers.
It's beautiful.
It says a lot.
It really does. It's like a reminder that we don't always have to wait for someone to be gone to show our appreciation,
Absolutely. Give flowers while someone can still enjoy them.
Exactly.
And for Huston, I think it's especially important.
Yeah.
Here's this guy who spent his whole career behind the scenes, shaping the sound of music we all love.
But never seeking the spotlight.
Right. This article feels like a well-deserved tribute.
To a true unsung hero.
It is, and it's not just about his past achievements.
It's not.
It's about the impact he's had on other musicians and engineers.
Think about all the people he's inspired,
Yeah.
who've learned from him, carried on his legacy.
That's a great point. His influence goes way beyond the albums he engineered.
Exactly. It's like a ripple effect.
touching every corner of the music industry.
Totally. And speaking of legacy, the article mentions he stepped away from the industry now,
Oh, wow.
living a quieter life in Louisiana.
That's kind of bittersweet.
It is. On one hand, it's awesome he can enjoy his retirement.
He's earned it.
For sure. But on the other hand, it's sad to know someone who contributed so much isn't actively shaping things anymore.
I get that. Part of me wishes he was still in the studio, pushing those boundaries, mentoring the next generation.
Right.
But I also respect his decision to step back.
Yeah.
He deserves it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe he's still tinkering with sound out there, experimenting, passing on his knowledge in his own way.
I bet he is. It's hard to imagine someone like him completely silencing his passion.
Right. But no matter what he's doing these days, his impact on music is undeniable.
He helped shape so many classic albums.
And he innovated new recording techniques.
Inspired generations of musicians.
And engineers.
And because of this deep dive,
our listener now knows his name.
And understands what he did.
It's a good reminder that behind every great song,
there's a whole team of talented people.
Working behind the scenes.
People like Chris Huston.
Dedicating their lives to crafting the soundtrack of our lives.
So well said. So the next time you're listening to your favorite album, take a moment to appreciate those unsung heroes.
The engineers, producers, musicians.
All those who bring the music to life.
And if you hear something with that Chris Huston magic,
give a little nod of appreciation to the man who made it sound so good.
And remember, there are so many other hidden giants out there.
Just waiting to be discovered.
So keep exploring. Keep listening.
And never underestimate the power of those behind the scenes.
Well said.
That's a perfect way to wrap things up. Until next time, keep diving deep.